The agents didn't kick down my parents' door. They just knocked, polite and terrifyingly quiet. I had spent 10 years building a firewall between my classified life and my family's chaos. But it took my brother less than 20 minutes to tear it down. Watching them bag my mother's tablet as evidence, I realized the worst part wasn't the investigation. It was knowing the people I loved were the security breach I never saw coming. Harbor Point was the kind of city that looked beautiful on a postcard, but felt heavy when you actually lived there. It was all gray slate roofs, churning gray ocean, and a pervasive salty dampness that got into your bones and your electronics. I had lived here for 33 years, and for the last 5 of them, I had worked for Aster Meridian Systems. To most people, Aster Meridian was just a logo on a glass building downtown, a vague entity that sponsored the annual 10K charity run and the 4th of July fireworks. To those of us inside, it was a fortress of compliance, logistics, and data infrastructure. We didn't build the ports or the power grids. We built the digital nervous systems that told them when to breathe. My job as a project manager was less about coding and more about shepherding massive, sensitive deliverables through a maze of federal regulations and client expectations. It was boring, high pressure, and lucrative. It was also the only thing in my life that I had complete control over. Until Tuesday. It started with a hardware failure, the kind of mundane catastrophe that ruins a week. I was sitting at my kitchen island, the remnants of a kale salad wilting in a bowl beside me, staring at the deliverables for the Port Authority modernization project. This was the big one. 6 months of integration work due at 9 the next morning. My laptop, a high-end company-issued machine that cost more than my first car, let out a singular, mechanical whine. The screen fractured into digital static, flashed blue, and then went dead black. I sat there for 10 seconds, waiting for it to reboot. It did not. I pressed the power button. Nothing. The fan didn't even spin. Panic is a cold thing. It starts in the stomach and moves up the throat. I had backups. Of course, Aster Meridian was obsessive about redundancy. All the live data was on the secure cloud. But to access the secure cloud, I needed a device with the right certificates, and my only authorized device was currently a paperweight. I looked at the clock on the microwave. It was 7 in the evening. IT support had gone home, and the automated helpline would keep me on hold until the sun came up. Then I remembered the drive, 2 years ago, during a system migration that had gone sideways. IT had issued a few of us encrypted external drives to transfer localized assets. I had never returned mine. It was sitting in a fireproof box in my closet, labeled in blue painter's tape with my sharp handwriting, basic work files. It wasn't the live cloud data, but it contained the resource libraries, the templates, and the raw data sets I needed to manually assemble the final report on my personal laptop. It was a violation of protocol to use a personal machine, strictly speaking, but the deadline was absolute. If I missed the delivery window, the penalties for the company would be in the 6 figures. I made a command decision. I grabbed the drive. It felt heavy, cold, and solid. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Leah, are you coming? We need to settle the menu for Sienna's brunch tonight. The caterer is threatening to drop us." I closed my eyes and exhaled. My sister Sienna was getting married in 3 months, and my mother was treating the engagement brunch like a royal coronation. I was the maid of honor, which in my family meant I was the logistics coordinator, the financier, and the emotional shock absorber. I can do both. I told myself I could go to my parents' house, pacify the caterer, use my dad's high-speed fiber connection, which was faster than mine, and finish the report on my personal MacBook while they argued about quiches. It was a calculation. It was the wrong one. I drove to my parents' house in the sprawling, manicured suburbs north of the city. The house was a pristine colonial with white shutters and a lawn that looked like it had been vacuumed. This was the stage where the Reed family drama was performed. My mother, Patricia, believed that if things looked perfect, they were perfect. My father, Robert, believed that if he stayed quiet enough, no one would ask him to do anything hard. And then there were the siblings. When I walked into the kitchen, The chaos was already at a simmer. Sienna was sitting at the marble island, looking tearful over a sample menu. My mother was aggressively chopping carrots, which was her way of expressing disappointment, and leaning against the refrigerator, drinking a craft beer he definitely hadn't paid for, was my older brother, Gavin. Gavin was 35, charming, handsome, and chronically almost successful. He was always one meeting away from a big break, one investor away from a revolution, one lucky break away from paying me back the $2,000 he borrowed last Christmas. "Hey, corporate superstar," Gavin said, raising his bottle. "You look tired. They working you to death at the data mine?" "Hello, Gavin," I said, dropping my bag on a side chair. I kissed my mother on the cheek. She smelled of expensive moisturizer and stress. "You are late," my mother said. "The caterer says if we do not pick the appetizers by tomorrow, we lose our slot. Smoked salmon or mini caprese?" Sienna says caprese is common. I say salmon is risky for an outdoor event. "Caprese," I said, without breaking stride. "It is safer. Who cares if it is common? People like cheese. See?" Gavin said. "Leah has spoken, the oracle of pragmatism." I ignored him and pulled out my personal laptop and the ruggedized drive. I needed to focus. I cleared a space at the far end of the dining table, away from the kitchen war zone. "I have to finish a report tonight." "Mom," I said loud enough for the room to hear. "My work laptop died. I am using a backup. This is critical. Do not touch this computer. Do not move this drive. Do not spill wine near it." My father wandered in from the living room, holding a remote control. "Is the internet slow for anyone else?" he asked. "It is fine." "Dad," I said. I looked at them all, making eye contact. "I am serious. This is sensitive work stuff. I am going to log in, sync the files, and just work in the background while we talk about the brunch. But nobody touches the hardware." "Understood?" My mother waved a carrot at me. "You are so dramatic. Leah, we are not spies. We just want to know if we can have a mimosa station." I plugged the drive in. The little blue light on the casing blinked rapidly, then settled into a steady, rhythmic pulse. My personal laptop recognized it. I entered the decryption key. The folder appeared. Basic work files. I felt a wave of relief. The data was there. I could reconstruct the report. "Leah." Sienna whined from the kitchen. "Mom is saying we can't afford the raw bar. You said you would look at the budget." I sighed. I stood up. Leaving the laptop open and the drive connected, the screensaver was set to activate in 5 minutes. I would only be gone for 2. I walked into the kitchen to mediate the dispute between my mother's ambition and my father's retirement savings. It took 20 minutes, not 2. My mother insisted on showing me color swatches for the napkins, and then the florist called, and I had to talk her down from a panic attack about hydrangeas. While I was arguing about flower arrangements, the house was quiet, or so I thought. In the dining room, Gavin was staring at my laptop. I didn't know this at the time. I learned it later, piece by painful piece, but I can imagine it now with clarity that makes my stomach turn. Gavin, desperate and curious. Gavin, who had been talking to a friend who knew about tech. Gavin, who had overheard me weeks ago mentioning the completion bonuses for the port project. He didn't see a sister who supported him. He saw an opportunity. He saw a glowing screen and a drive that I had made a big deal about. He sat in my chair. He touched the trackpad. The screen woke up. He clicked on the folder. He probably expected to see bank account numbers or corporate secrets he could sell. Instead, he saw files with names like port_auth_logistics_v4 and grid_integrity_manifest. Boring. Useless to a layman. But Gavin wasn't thinking like a layman. He was thinking like a desperate man trying to impress a shark. He had a friend, a woman named Marla who had been coaching him on how to break into the remote work sector. She had told him that having real-world templates from major contractors was a goldmine for resumes. "Just get me some raw data structures," she had said. "I can help you build a portfolio that looks like you have 10 years of experience." Gavin pulled a thumb drive from his pocket, a cheap, plastic thing on his keychain. He plugged it into the second USB port on my Mac. He dragged the folder labeled project_assets_04 onto his drive. The progress bar moved quickly, blue to blue. He didn't open the files. He didn't read them. He just copied them. He thought he was borrowing a template. He thought he was copying a spreadsheet to help him fake a resume. He heard my footsteps coming back from the kitchen. He yanked his drive out, slid it into his pocket, and stood up. When I walked back into the dining room, he was standing by the window, looking out at the dark driveway. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine," I said. Annoyed. "We are doing the raw bar, but cutting the dessert table." I sat back down. My screen was exactly where I left it. The cursor blinked. The drive light pulsed. I worked for another 3 hours at my parents' table. I built the report. I ignored the tightness in my shoulders. By 10 o'clock, I was done. I ejected the drive, packed up my laptop, and said my goodbyes. "You work too hard," my father said as I put on my coat. "Someone has to," I said. I drove home through the fog, feeling the adrenaline crash. I was exhausted. I wanted a glass of wine and 8 hours of sleep. I got into my apartment, a quiet, orderly space that smelled of lemon polish and silence. I set my personal laptop on the coffee table and opened it to do one final check before sending the file via the secure web portal. That was when I saw it. In the top right corner of my screen, a small, gray notification banner slid into view. It wasn't a standard Apple system notification. It was a semi-translucent overlay, blocky and utilitarian. Integrity check completed. I froze. I had never installed security software that looked like that. I stared at it, waiting for it to elaborate. It hovered for 3 seconds, then dissolved into pixels and vanished. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes. I was tired. Maybe it was an update for the virus scanner I used. Maybe it was a glitch in the OS. I opened my applications folder. Nothing new. I checked the activity monitor. Nothing suspicious running in the foreground. "You are being paranoid," I whispered to the empty room. "You are stressed about the laptop crash." I uploaded the report to the Aster Meridian portal. It went through smoothly. Green checkmark. Submission received. I poured that glass of wine. I drank it standing up in the kitchen. I told myself that everything was fine. I had solved the problem. I had saved the deadline. I went to sleep. Across town, in a messy apartment filled with half-finished projects and unpaid bills. Gavin sat at his own computer. He plugged in his thumb drive. He opened an email client and attached the folder he had stolen from me. He typed a quick message to Marla. "Hey, got those templates you asked for. Real deal stuff from Aster. Let me know if this works for the portfolio." He hit send. He didn't know that the file wasn't just a spreadsheet. He didn't know that Aster Meridian embedded passive trackers in their localized data packs. Tiny, invisible beacons designed to ping a central server if the data ever left an authorized environment. Gavin went to bed dreaming of a 6-figure salary. I went to bed dreaming of a wedding brunch. Somewhere in a server farm in Virginia. A silent alarm tripped. A line of code turned from green to red. An automated flag was attached to my employee ID. The next morning, the fog had lifted. Leaving the city bright and sharp, I felt good. I had beaten the crisis. I walked into the Aster Meridian lobby at 8:30. Holding a large coffee, I swiped my badge at the turnstile. It beeped green. I walked to the elevator. The routine was comforting. The hum of the ventilation, the smell of carpet cleaner, the quiet nods of colleagues. I sat at my desk, docked my personal laptop, which I brought in to have IT wipe and certify since I had used it for work, and tried to log into my primary workstation. Password incorrect. I frowned. I typed it again. I had used the same password for 90 days. It was muscle memory. Password incorrect. Account locked. Contact administrator. A prickle of heat ran up my neck. This happens sometimes. Mandatory resets. Glitches. But combined with the dead laptop yesterday, it felt heavy. I picked up my desk phone to call the help desk. The line was dead. No dial tone. I slowly hung up the receiver. The office around me was buzzing with normal morning activity, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, but my little island of silence felt suddenly conspicuous. My mobile phone rang. I jumped. It was Marcus, my department head. Marcus was a good guy, a soft-spoken man who coached Little League and brought donuts on Fridays. Leah? His voice sounded tinny. Hi, Marcus. I said, I am locked out of the system, and my desk phone is dead. Is there a server outage? There was a pause. Too long of a pause. Leah, can you come to conference room B? We need to go over the submission from last night. Sure, I said. I just need to get IT to unlock me. Just come to the conference room. Leah, bring your bag. Bring my bag? Why would I bring my bag to a meeting down the hall? Okay, I said. My voice sounded calm, but my hand was shaking as I picked up my purse. I looked at my personal laptop sitting on the desk. I grabbed it too. I walked down the hallway. Conference room B was at the far end, past the break room. It was usually used for client presentations. The blinds were drawn. I opened the door. Marcus was there. But he wasn't sitting at the head of the table. He was standing in the corner, looking at the floor. Sitting at the table were two people I didn't know, a woman in a gray suit and a man in a blue button-down shirt. They looked like HR, but sharper, harder. Please, sit down. Ms. Reed, the woman said. She didn't smile. I sat. I placed my bag on the floor. I put my hands on the table to stop them from trembling. What is going on? I asked. Marcus? Marcus looked up, met my eyes for a second, then looked away. It is just a routine inquiry. Leah, Ms. Reed, the man in the blue shirt said. He had a thick folder in front of him. My name is Mr. Arndt. This is Ms. Cole from Internal Security. We have flagged some irregularities with your credentials over the last 12 hours. Irregularities? I said. My laptop died. I used a backup drive to finish the Port Authority report. I uploaded it last night. I can explain the protocol breach. It was an emergency deadline. We know about the upload. Ms. Cole said. Her voice was flat, devoid of judgment or sympathy. We are asking about the secondary transfer. Secondary transfer? I frowned. I don't know what you are talking about. I uploaded the file to the portal. That was it. Did you travel recently? Mr. Arndt asked. Did you meet with any competitors? Did you leave your devices unattended at any point? No. I said, I went to my parents' house. I worked from their dining room table. Who was there? My family. My parents. My brother. Did any of them access your device? I laughed. A short, nervous sound. No. God. No. My mother thinks the cloud is actual weather. My brother. My brother barely knows how to use Excel. They are not tech people. Mr. Arndt wrote something down. Mrs. Reed, he said, at 11:42 p.m. last night, a packet of data associated with your user profile was uploaded to a server hosted in Eastern Europe. The IP address originated from a residential ISP in this city, not your apartment. My stomach dropped. The floor seemed to tilt. That is impossible. I said, I was asleep. Ms. Cole leaned forward. We need you to surrender all devices in your possession, personal and professional. Phone, laptop, tablets. Now, I asked. Right now. I handed over my phone. I handed over my personal laptop. I felt naked. I felt violated. This is a mistake, I said. You have to believe me. We are just gathering facts, Marcus said softly from the corner. Just cooperate. Leah, they escorted me out, not in handcuffs, but it felt worse. They walked me past my desk, where my coworkers were typing, oblivious. They walked me to the elevator. Mr. Arndt rode down with me. He didn't speak. He just watched the numbers change. When I stepped out onto the street, the sun was still shining. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. I had no phone. I had no laptop. I had been suspended pending an investigation. I stood on the sidewalk, watching the traffic. I needed to go to my parents' house. I needed to look them in the eye. I hailed a cab. The ride took 40 minutes. I spent every minute of it replaying the night before, the drive on the table, the 5 minutes I spent arguing about napkins, Gavin standing by the window. No, it wasn't possible. Gavin was lazy. Gavin was selfish. But Gavin wasn't malicious. He wouldn't steal from me. He wouldn't risk my career. I walked into my parents' house without knocking. My mother was in the living room, watching a talk show. "Leah?" she said, surprised. "Why are you not at work? Did you forget something? Where is Gavin?" I asked. My voice was tight. "He is sleeping, I think. He was up late." I walked up the stairs. I pushed open Gavin's bedroom door. The room smelled of stale laundry and body spray. Gavin was asleep, face down on the pillow. "Gavin," I shouted. He groaned and rolled over, squinting at me. "Leah? What the hell?" "It is early. Did you touch my computer?" I asked. I stood at the foot of his bed, my hands balled into fists. "Last night, did you touch my computer?" He sat up, rubbing his face. He looked genuinely confused. "What? No. You told us not to. Don't lie to me." "Gavin, I was just escorted out of my building by security. They said data was stolen. They said it happened last night." Gavin's face changed. It wasn't guilt. Exactly. It was defensiveness. The instant armor of the guilty. "You think I did it?" he said, his voice rising. "You think I am some kind of super hacker? I was drinking a beer. Leah, I was listening to Mom complain about flowers. You were in the room alone with it. I said, so was Dad. So was the cat." Gavin threw his covers off and stood up. He was wearing boxers and a t-shirt. "This is classic Leah. Something goes wrong in your perfect life, and you look for the family screw-up to blame. I am not blaming. I am asking. You are accusing," he shouted. "You think we are criminals? You think I would jeopardize you? I am your brother." My mother appeared in the doorway, looking terrified. "Stop it. Why are you shouting? She thinks I hacked her computer." "Mom," Gavin said, pointing at me. "She thinks I stole her precious files." "Leah, that is ridiculous," my mother said. "Gavin doesn't even know what you do." I looked at them. They were united. The wall of denial. If I pushed harder, I would be the villain. I would be the hysterical daughter attacking the family peace. I took a deep breath. I looked at Gavin. He held my gaze. He looked angry. He looked insulted. He looked innocent. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was a remote hack. Maybe someone had phished my credentials weeks ago and just waited until last night to strike. "I am sorry," I whispered. I am scared. I might lose my job." My mother softened. "Oh, honey, it will be fine. It is just a mix-up. You are their best worker. They will figure it out." Gavin sat back down on the bed. "Yeah, Lee, don't stress. It's probably just a glitch." I nodded. I backed out of the room. I felt small. I felt ashamed for doubting them. I went downstairs and used the landline to call a taxi. I went back to my apartment. I sat on my couch and stared at the wall. The silence of the apartment was heavy. Without my phone, I felt phantom vibrations in my pocket. I checked the landline voicemail. I still had a landline, a relic I kept for emergencies. The red light was blinking. One new message. I pressed play. The voice that filled the room was synthetic, smooth, and utterly devoid of humanity. "This is a compliance inquiry regarding protected materials. Do not alter or dispose of any devices in your possession. Agents have been dispatched to verify the integrity of your data assets. Please remain at your current location." The message ended with a click. I sat there, frozen. My breath hitched in my chest. Agents have been dispatched. I reached for the delete button. My finger hovered over it. I wanted to erase it. I wanted to pretend it hadn't happened. I pressed delete. The light stopped blinking. Then, a wave of pure, cold terror washed over me. What if that was evidence? What if deleting it made me look guilty? I fumbled with the keypad. Restore deleted messages. My hands were shaking so hard, I hit the wrong button twice. Finally, the robot lady spoke. Message restored. I sank back into the cushions. It was just a corporate mix-up. It had to be. Aster Meridian was thorough. They sent automated warnings. That's all this was. A scary automated warning. I tried to force myself to breathe. In for 4, out for 4. I am Leah Reed. I am a project manager. I follow the rules. I did nothing wrong. I closed my eyes, trying to visualize a calm ocean, but across the city, in a coffee shop with free Wi-Fi, a woman named Marla was sitting with a laptop. She opened the email from Gavin. She saw the attachment. She smiled. She didn't care about Gavin's resume. She didn't care about his portfolio. She forwarded the file to a secure Dropbox. And inside that file, buried deep within the metadata of the port_auth_logistics document, a tiny digital tripwire snapped. It wasn't just an internal security alert this time. This time, it sent a signal to a database in Maryland, a database that didn't belong to a corporation. I fell asleep on the couch, exhausted by fear. I didn't know that my life as I knew it had already ended. I didn't know that the people coming for me weren't HR. I didn't know that the basic work files were never basic. And I didn't know that the knock at the door wasn't going to be polite. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, the city slept. The fog rolled back in, and the data traveled, silent and lethal, through the dark. The conference room smelled of ionized air and aggressive cleaning agents. It was not the warm, mahogany-paneled room where we wooed clients with pastries and projections of synergy. This was a room I had only seen once before. During a mandatory safety drill, it was in the basement level. The walls were bare drywall painted a suffocating shade of beige, and the table was a slab of gray laminate that felt cold under my forearms. I was not under arrest. Mr. Arndt had been very specific about that word. I was simply being debriefed. But when you are sitting across from 3 people who are looking at you like you are a contagion rather than a colleague, the distinction feels academic. Ms. Cole, the woman from internal security, placed a single sheet of paper on the table. She did not slide it toward me. She just let it sit there, equidistant between us, a piece of geometry that defined the new boundaries of my life. Leah, she said. Her voice was terrifyingly reasonable. We need to walk through the chain of custody again. From the moment you left the building on Monday evening to the moment you logged in this morning, we need every device, every network, every pair of eyes. I took a breath. The air felt thin. I told you. My laptop failed. I took the backup drive, the encrypted asset drive, to my parents' house. I used my personal MacBook to complete the Port Authority deliverable. I uploaded the file. I went to sleep. And the drive? Ms. Cole asked. Where was the drive while you were working? On the table, connected to the MacBook. Did you leave the room? Yes, I said. I felt a flush of heat rise up my neck. I stepped away to help my mother with wedding planning for 20 minutes, maybe 30. And the devices were unattended? I was in the next room. I said, It is a private residence. The doors were locked. My family was there. Ms. Cole looked at Mr. Arndt. It was a micro-expression, a slight tightening of the lips, but it felt like a gavel coming down. Leah. Mr. Arndt said, leaning forward. He looked tired. He looked like a man who liked me but had a job to do that precluded mercy. Do you know what a honey token is? I stared at him. The term was vague. Something I had heard in passing during annual cyber awareness trainings that I usually clicked through while answering emails. It is a trap, I said. A piece of bait. Correct, he said. Aster Meridian does not just protect data with firewalls. We protect it with pollution. We embed inactive, highly traceable files within our standard project directories. They look like system architecture diagrams or payroll manifests. They are labeled enticingly, but they are empty of real data. Their only function is to wake up and scream when they are moved to an unauthorized environment. My hands were in my lap, gripping each other so hard my knuckles ached. The folder you accessed on the backup drive contained 3 such tokens. Arndt continued. One of them, a file labeled staffing_grid_v9, was not just opened, it was copied, and then it was transmitted. He paused. letting the weight of the words settle in the room. It was transmitted to a server that we have flagged for high-risk activity. He said, "This was not an accidental upload to a cloud backup. Leah, this was an exfiltration. The file traveled, and because it traveled, we now have a breach that extends beyond company policy." He looked at me with pity that made me want to vomit. "We are required by federal statute to report this kind of breach." He said, "The trace marker inside that file didn't just ping us, it pinged the oversight agency." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You mean the government?" "I mean that this is no longer an HR issue." "Ms. Cole interrupted. She tapped the table. "We need to know who touched that machine. If you lie to us to protect someone, you will be named as a co-conspirator in a federal investigation. Do you understand the exposure you are facing?" I understood. I understood that my life, which I had built brick by careful brick, the degree, the promotion, the apartment, the credit score, was swaying in a wind I hadn't even felt blowing until this moment. "I need to go get the drive," I whispered. "We will send a courier." "Ms." Cole said. "No." I said. I stood up. My legs felt like wood. "I need to get it. If I bring it to you, if I show you the logs on my personal machine, I can prove I didn't send it." "Ms." Cole looked ready to argue, but Mr. Arndt raised a hand. "You are on administrative leave. Leah, your access badges are deactivated. You have 2 hours to return that drive to the security desk in the lobby. If you do not, we will be forced to escalate this to law enforcement immediately." I didn't wait for them to dismiss me. I walked out of the room, my heels clicking on the linoleum like the ticking of a clock. I didn't go to my desk. I didn't say goodbye to Marcus. I walked straight to the elevator, rode it down to the lobby, and pushed through the revolving doors into the blind brightness of the mid-morning sun. I ran to my car. The drive to Harbor Point's northern suburbs usually took 40 minutes. I made it in 25. I drove with the radio off, my hands slick on the steering wheel. My mind was a looping video of the last 24 hours. Gavin standing by the window, Gavin asking about the bonus, Gavin's tech friend. It wasn't malice. I told myself, he is stupid, he is selfish, but he isn't a traitor. He didn't know what he was taking. But that was the problem with the law. It didn't care about intent, it cared about action. And Gavin had pulled the trigger on a gun he thought was a toy. I pulled into my parents' driveway, tires crunching on the gravel. The house looked infuriatingly peaceful. The hydrangeas were blooming blue and purple against the white siding. A sprinkler hissed rhythmically on the front lawn, a metronome of suburbia. I burst through the front door. "Mom! Dad!" My mother was in the dining room, holding a vase of white lilies. She looked up, startled, a frown creasing her forehead. "Leah?" She looked at her watch. "It is 11 in the morning. Why are you screaming? You know your father is taking a nap. Where is the drive?" I demanded. I walked past her, scanning the table. My personal laptop was gone. The drive was gone. What drive? The little gray box? Yes, the gray box. And my laptop. Where are they? "I put them in the guest room," she said, sounding offended. "You left them on the table last night like we live in a dormitory." I tidied up. "Honestly, Leah, you come in here shouting like the house is on fire. Where is Gavin?" "He went for a walk," she said. "He said he needed to clear his head. He seems stressed. I think he's worried about his career. You should be nicer to him." I didn't answer. I ran up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. I went into the guest room. There, on the perfectly made bed, sat my laptop and the ruggedized drive. I grabbed them, feeling a momentary wave of relief. They were here. I could take them back, but I needed to know. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. It booted up. I checked the recent activity logs. Nothing, just my work from the night before. Then I remembered. Gavin didn't use my laptop to send the file. He used his own. I stood up and walked down the hall to Gavin's room. The door was shut. I pushed it open. It was a teenager's room occupied by a 35-year-old man. Posters of bands that broke up a decade ago. A pile of sneakers in the corner. And on the desk, amidst a clutter of energy drink cans and crumpled fast food wrappers, was his laptop. It was open. I walked over to it. The screen was dim, but awake. I touched the trackpad. The browser window was open. It was a file transfer site, one of those anonymous hosting services that promise encryption and no logs. In the center of the screen was a status bar, upload complete, and below it, in the list of recent files, staffing_grid_v9.pdf. My stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my knees. I had to grab the edge of the desk to steady myself. It was true. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a mistake. My brother had reached into my life, taken the thing that kept me safe, and sold it for… what? I minimized the browser. I looked at his email. There was a draft open. Marla. Sent the grid. Let me know if this proves I can handle the data entry workflow. I really need this advance. Data entry. He thought he was proving he could do data entry. He had sold me out for a job interview. I heard the front door open downstairs. I am home. Gavin's voice, cheerful, oblivious. I closed his laptop. I didn't shut it down. I just lowered the lid. I walked out of his room and down the stairs. Gavin was in the kitchen, opening the refrigerator. He was wearing a tracksuit and looking flushed, like he had actually gone for a jog. My mother was arranging the lilies. My father had just come in from the back deck, holding a coffee mug. Hey, Lee, Gavin said, popping a soda tab, taking a half day. I stood in the doorway. I felt a cold clarity that terrified me. This was the moment. This was the moment where the family story, the story that said Gavin was just unlucky, that Mom was just eccentric, that Dad was just tired, finally shattered against the rock of reality. You stole files from my work drive. I said. The room went quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Excuse me? Gavin said. He laughed, but his eyes darted to the side. I just saw your laptop. Gavin, I saw the upload. You copied the staffing grid file. You sent it to someone named Marla. My mother stopped adjusting the flowers. Leah, what are you talking about? Gavin's face went red. He slammed the soda can down on the counter. You went into my room? You violated my privacy? You violated a federal security protocol, I shouted. My voice cracked. I have been suspended. Gavin, security escorted me out of the building. They know the file was moved. They know it left the house. Gavin looked at our parents, then back at me. He held out his hands, palms up, the universal gesture of the caught man trying to minimize the damage. Okay, calm down, he said. Look, it's not a big deal. Marla, she's a career coach. She told me she could get me a remote gig. Data management, big money. She just needed to see that I could handle industry-standard templates. I didn't steal secrets. Leah, I just borrowed a blank form. It's a spreadsheet. Who cares about a spreadsheet? It wasn't a spreadsheet, I said, stepping closer to him. It was a trap. It was a decoy file designed to catch hackers. And you triggered it. Gavin blinked. A trap? That's paranoid. Why would your company put traps in their own files? To catch people like you. My mother stepped between us. Leah, stop shouting at your brother. He made a mistake. He was trying to show initiative. He's trying to find work. You should be supportive. Supportive? I looked at her, incredulous. Mom, this isn't about him borrowing the car without asking. This is industrial espionage. The file he sent is beaconing to the government right now. My father cleared his throat. He looked pale. Can we just delete it? He asked. If Gavin deletes the email, does it go away? I looked at my father. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike, the man who had always told me to keep my head down and work hard, and I realized, with a breaking heart, that he was a child. They were all children. I was the only adult in the room, and I was drowning. It is too late to delete it, I said. They know. Gavin walked over to me. He dropped his voice to a whisper. He put a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy. Lee, come on. You're the project manager, right? You fix things. That's what you do. Just tell them you did it. Tell them you sent it to yourself to work on it at home. If you say it, it's just a policy violation. A slap on the wrist. If I say it, I don't have a clearance. They'll crush me. I stared at him. He was asking me to jump on the grenade he had pulled the pin on. "You want me to take the blame?" I asked quietly. "You can handle it," he said. "You're golden there. They love you. Just fix it, Lee, for the family." The doorbell rang. It wasn't a normal ring. It was a long, firm press. We all froze. "I am expecting a package," my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. I moved to the window. I pulled back the sheer curtain. There was no delivery truck. There were 2 black SUVs parked at the curb, blocking the driveway. They were large, domestic models, the kind with tinted windows and extra antennas on the roof. 4 people were getting out. They were wearing dark windbreakers with yellow lettering on the back. I couldn't read the lettering, but I knew what it said. "It is not a package," I said. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Ethan. I picked it up. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "Leah?" Ethan's voice was the only steady thing in the world. "I'm 5 minutes away. I got your text. I'm coming over." "Ethan, don't come," I said. "They are here." "Who is here?" "The government." I said. "Leah, listen to me," Ethan said. His voice was sharp, cutting through the panic. "Do not lie for them. Do not cover for Gavin. I know you. I know you think it's your job to save them. It is not. If you lie to federal agents, you lose everything. You lose us. Do you hear me?" I looked at Gavin. He was chewing his lip, looking at the door with the eyes of a trapped animal. "I hear you," I said. I hung up. The doorbell rang again. 3 sharp knocks followed. My father moved to answer it. "Dad." "Wait," I said. But he was already opening the door. The agents didn't storm in. They didn't have guns drawn. That would have been easier. In a way, violence is a language everyone understands. This was bureaucracy, which is far colder. 2 men and 2 women stepped into the foyer. They filled the space instantly. One of the men, the leader, held up a leather wallet. He flipped it open. A silver badge caught the light. "Mrs. Reed? Mr. Reed? I am Special Agent Miller, Domestic Security Operations Division. We have a warrant for the seizure of all electronic devices located at this address, pursuant to an investigation into the theft of controlled infrastructure data." My mother let out a sound that was half gasp, half shriek. "Oh my God. Robert, do something." My father stammered. There must be a mistake. We are just a family." "There is no mistake," Agent Miller said. He looked past my parents. His eyes locked onto mine. He didn't ask who I was. He knew. "Ms. Reed," he said, "please place your hands where we can see them. We need to secure the scene." I held my hands up. They were empty. Gavin tried to back away toward the kitchen. "Sir, stay where you are," one of the female agents said. She moved with a fluid, terrifying speed, blocking his path. "This is crazy," my mother yelled. She grabbed my father's arm. "Tell them to leave. Robert, this is harassment. We have rights." "Ma'am, please calm down," Agent Miller said. He signaled to his team. They began to move through the house. It was efficient, brutal. One agent went to the living room and unplugged the router. Another went to the table and picked up my mother's iPad. "You can't take that," my mother cried. "My recipes are on there." "We are taking everything," the agent said. The front door opened again. Ethan stood there. He was breathless, his tie loosened. He looked at the agents, then at me. He didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. "Sir, step back," an agent said. "I am her attorney." Ethan lied smoothly. He wasn't a criminal attorney. He was in estate law. But he stepped into the room with a confidence that made the agent pause. "I am representing Ms. Reed." Agent Miller looked at Ethan, then shrugged. "You can observe. Do not interfere." The agents moved into the kitchen. They found Gavin's laptop. The one agent took a picture of the screen, then closed it and placed it in a Faraday bag, a silver, foil-lined pouch designed to block signals. "That's my computer," Gavin said. "I need that for work." "You have the right to remain silent," the agent said to him. "I suggest you use it." My father stepped forward. He looked small. His shoulders were slumped. "It was me," he said. His voice was shaking. I clicked on something. I didn't know what it was. I was trying to check my email. "It was a mistake. Don't punish the kids. It was me." I closed my eyes. It was heartbreaking. It was pathetic. He was trying to be the father he had never been, trying to absorb the blow 20 years too late. Agent Miller didn't even look at him. He looked at me. He was watching my face. He was watching to see if I would nod. He was watching to see if I would let the old man take the fall. It wasn't him. I said, my voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise of my mother's sobbing. "Leah," Gavin hissed. "It wasn't him." I repeated. Agent Miller nodded. "We know," he said. He walked over to me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was white, heavy stock, with a seal embossed in gold. He handed it to me. "Ms. Reed, you are not under arrest at this time," he said, "but we are designating you as a person of interest. We are going to analyze these devices. We are going to trace that transmission. If we find that you facilitated this, knowingly or unknowingly, we will be back." He looked at Gavin, and we will be looking very closely at who exactly initiated that transfer. Gavin looked at his feet. The agents worked for another hour. They took everything: the smart TV, the printer, my mother's phone, Gavin's phone, my backup drive. When they left, the house was silent. The silence was worse than the shouting. It was the silence of a bomb crater. My mother sat on the sofa, weeping into a tissue. My father stood by the window, watching the SUVs drive away. Gavin was pacing the kitchen, muttering to himself. Ethan walked over to me. He took my hand. His hand was warm. Mine was ice. "We need to go," he said. "I can't leave them." I whispered. "Leah," Ethan said. He turned me to face him. "Look at them." I looked. My mother was already crafting the narrative. "I can't believe hackers targeted us," she sobbed. "It must be because of your job." "Leah, they targeted you and used us. How could you bring this into our house?" I looked at Gavin. He met my eyes, then looked away. He didn't say sorry. He didn't say thank you for not turning him in right there. He just looked resentful, like I was the one who had inconvenienced him. "You see?" Ethan said. "They are already blaming you." I looked at the card in my hand. Domestic Security Operations Division. I realized then that the legal trouble was terrifying. I could go to prison. I could lose my career. I could be blacklisted. But that wasn't the part that made my chest ache. The worst part was the realization that settled in my gut like a stone. My family hadn't just been careless. They hadn't just been stupid. Gavin had looked at my life, my hard work, my discipline, my safety, and he had seen it as a resource to be strip-mined. He didn't care if he broke me, as long as he got what he wanted, and my mother, in her tears, wasn't mourning my career. She was mourning her iPad. I squeezed Ethan's hand. "Take me home," I said, as we walked out to his car, leaving the perfect white house behind. I wondered if I would ever come back. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if the people inside were actually my family, or just people who shared my last name and my secrets. I got into the passenger seat. Ethan started the car. I looked at the side mirror. The house grew smaller as we drove away, but the feeling of dread didn't fade. It grew, because I knew something the agents didn't. I knew Gavin wasn't smart enough to find a buyer for those files on his own. Someone had asked him for them. Someone had guided him, and whoever that was, they now had the bait, and they were just getting started. The silence of my apartment was different from the silence I was used to. Before Tuesday, silence was a luxury, a rare commodity purchased with noise-canceling headphones and the Do Not Disturb function on my phone. It was the space where I thought, where I planned, where I decompressed from the relentless friction of project management. Now, the silence was heavy and textured, like a woolen blanket soaked in ice water. It wasn't the absence of noise. It was the presence of exclusion. I had been placed on administrative leave effective immediately. The email had come to my personal account, the only one I could still access, 2 hours after the agents left my parents' driveway. It was a form letter, signed by the Vice President of Human Resources, a woman who had once complimented my shoes in the elevator. It cited pending security audit and policy violation regarding external assets. It said my badge was deactivated. It said my salary would continue for the duration of the inquiry. It did not say when the inquiry would end. For the first 3 days, I checked my phone every 4 minutes. It was a phantom limb reflex. I was waiting for Marcus to text me, for a junior analyst to ask where a file was, for the mundane, chaotic symphony of my career to resume. But the phone was a brick, my colleagues. People I had shared lunches and deadlines and panic attacks with for 5 years had gone dark. It wasn't just professional distance, it was a quarantine. I had become radioactive. I sent a text to Sarah, my closest work friend. Just a simple, thinking of you. Hope the presentation went well. The message was delivered. It was never read. Ethan tried to fill the void. He was a saint. Or he was trying to be. He came home early from his law firm, carrying grocery bags filled with things we didn't need. Artisanal cheese. A specific brand of sparkling water I liked. Expensive steaks. He was trying to pave over the crater in our lives with consumption. We should look at the seating chart for the wedding, he said on Thursday night, spreading a large printout on the kitchen island. I was thinking we could put your cousin Mike at the table with the college friends. He is loud. They are loud. It works. I looked at the chart. It was a grid of circles and names. It looked like a data set. It looked like a target list. Sure, I said. That makes sense. You are not looking at it. Leah, Ethan said gently. He put a hand on my back. I am looking. I said, I keep thinking about the timestamp. The agent said the file moved at 11:42 p.m. I was brushing my teeth then. If I had stayed downstairs 5 minutes longer. Leah, stop. I can't stop. Ethan. I pulled away from his touch. Walking to the window, the city lights were a blur of gold and white. Somewhere out there, my career was being disassembled. Somewhere out there. My brother was probably playing video games, convinced the storm had passed. I am a project manager. Ethan, my job is to control variables. I missed a variable. I missed a massive, glaring variable in my own family. You didn't miss it, he said. You trusted them. That is not a failure of management. It is a failure of them deserving it. I turned to look at him. He looked tired. The lines around his eyes were deeper than they had been a week ago. He loved me. I knew that. But I also knew that Ethan craved stability the way plants crave light. He had fallen in love with Leah the executive, Leah the competent. He had not signed up for Leah the person of interest. The next morning, the call came, not from Astor Meridian, but from a number with a Washington, D.C. area code. Ms. Reed, this is Agent Miller. We need you to come in for a follow-up interview. He gave me an address. It wasn't the federal building downtown, and it wasn't a police station. It was an office park in the suburbs. A nondescript building of smoked glass and gray brick that could have housed a dentist or a tax accountant. I drove myself. I wore a suit. It was armor. If I was going to be dissected, I would be dressed for the boardroom. The office was on the 3rd floor. There was no signage on the door. Just a suite number, 304. Inside, the carpet was industrial gray. The walls were unadorned, and the air smelled of stale coffee and ozone. Agent Miller was waiting for me in a small conference room. He was alone this time. He looked less like a stormtrooper and more like a weary bureaucrat. Please, sit, he said. I sat. I placed my hands on the table. Clasped. Am I being charged? I asked. Not yet, he said. He opened a laptop. And hopefully not at all. But that depends on what you tell me today. I have told you everything. I said. I told you about the drive. I told you about Gavin. We know. He said. He tapped a few keys. We have completed the preliminary forensic analysis of your brother's laptop and your mother's iPad. We also traced the packet trajectory. He turned the laptop screen toward me. It showed a map of the world, overlaid with a spiderweb of red lines. Your brother thought he was uploading a file to a resume service, Miller said, and on the surface, he was. The URL he used was a front, a legitimate-looking portal designed to harvest data from gullible job seekers. But the back end? That is where it gets interesting. He pointed to a node in Eastern Europe. The file didn't stop there. It was bounced through 3 relay servers, one in Latvia, one in Brazil, one in Macau, before landing here. He pointed to a dark cluster in the middle of the digital ocean. What is that? I asked. That is a dark web forum known as The Exchange. Miller said, It is not for resume boosting. Ms. Reed, it is a marketplace for infrastructure vulnerabilities. It is where people buy blueprints for power grids, water treatment facilities, and Port Authority logistics systems. I felt the blood drain from my face. My brother put a port security manifest on a terrorist marketplace? Your brother opened the door, Miller corrected. But he didn't know where the room led. This is what we call proximity exploitation. I stared at him. The phrase felt clinical and violating. Proximity exploitation, he repeated. Professional actors do not attack hardened targets like Astor Meridian directly. Our firewalls are too good. Your encryption is too heavy. So they look for the soft underbelly. They look for the people around the target. The messy brother, the naive mother, the trusting spouse. He leaned forward. His eyes were hard. This wasn't an opportunistic grab. Leah, someone didn't just stumble upon your brother. Someone groomed him. They found the weak link in your perimeter and they worked it until it snapped. They used your family to get to you. I sat back, feeling sick. The image of Gavin, drinking his beer, bragging about his tech friend, flashed in my mind. Who? I whispered. That is what we need you to find out. Miller said, We have the digital trail, but we need the human element. Your brother is, let's say, resistant to admitting he was played. He is embarrassed. He is scared. But he talks to you. He is not talking to me right now. I said, He thinks I betrayed him. Miller slid a folder across the table. Inside was a single photograph. It was a grainy surveillance shot of a woman sitting at a cafe table. She had dark hair, a sharp blazer, and a smile that looked practiced. Do you recognize her? Miller asked. I looked closer. No, I don't. Miller took the photo back. Find out who she is. Your brother has been communicating with someone. Find out who held his hand while he pulled the trigger. I left the office feeling like I had been skinned. Proximity exploitation. It made me sound like a disease vector. I wasn't a person. I was a vulnerability. My love for my family, my loyalty, my patience with their dysfunction. It wasn't virtue. It was an attack surface. I didn't go home. I drove straight to my parents' house. The house was quiet. The curtains were drawn. Since the raid, my parents had retreated into a shell of shame and denial. I used my key to let myself in. The living room was empty. I found my father in the kitchen, staring at the microwave clock as if it held the secrets of the universe. Leah, he said, startled. We didn't expect you. Where is Gavin? I asked. He is in the garage. My father said, He is working out. He says he needs to get in shape for when he moves out. He is not moving out. Dad, he has $40 in his checking account and the feds froze his assets. I walked to the garage. The door was unlocked. Inside, amidst the smell of gasoline and old cardboard, Gavin was hitting a heavy bag that had hung in the corner since high school. He was sweating. His punches sloppy and angry. Thud, thud, thud. Gavin, I said. He stopped. He didn't turn around. He leaned his forehead against the bag, breathing hard. What do you want, Leah? Come to gloat? Come to tell me how much smarter you are? I walked over to him. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt cold. I felt the precise, surgical focus of a project manager dealing with a catastrophic failure. I just came from the DSOD. I said, Gavin snorted, Your new best friends. They told me where the file went. Gavin, it didn't go to a resume site. It went to a broker forum. It went to people who buy maps of city infrastructure so they can shut down the power grid. Gavin turned around. He looked pale. That's bullshit. It was a job site. Pivot Point Careers. It looked real. It had a logo and everything. It was a front. I said, and the person who gave it to you knew that. No. Gavin shook his head. No way. Marla wouldn't do that. She's legit. She has clients. She showed me her LinkedIn. Marla. I said. The name hung in the damp air of the garage. Marla who? Marla Vance. Gavin said. He crossed his arms. Defensive. She's a career coach. I met her a few months ago. She helps people transition into tech. She's been helping me fix my resume. She said I had potential. I stared at him. Potential. The magic word. The word Gavin had been starving for his entire life. Where did you meet her? I asked. At the gym, he said. Then we grabbed coffee. She's cool. Leah. She listens. She actually believes I can do something other than retail. She isn't like you. She doesn't look at me like I'm a charity case. She looks at you like a tool. Gavin. I said. He flushed. Screw you. How often do you see her? I don't know. Once a week? She comes to family stuff sometimes. I froze. She comes to family stuff? Yeah. She came to the barbecue last month, and she stopped by when we were planning the anniversary party. Mom likes her. My stomach twisted. I tried to remember the barbecue. There had been 20 people, neighbors, cousins, and yes, a woman in a sundress, laughing at my father's jokes, handing out napkins. I had assumed she was a neighbor's guest. I had smiled at her. I had probably handed her a potato salad. She has been in the house? I asked. Yeah, Gavin said. She's a friend. Leah. God, you're so paranoid. I turned and ran back into the house. Mom! I shouted. My mother was coming down the stairs, holding a basket of laundry. She looked frail without her iPad, as if the device had been a structural support. Leah, really. The shouting. Mom. I said, grabbing her arm, Who is Marla Vance? My mother blinked. Marla? Oh, she is a lovely girl. She is helping Gavin. She is very encouraging. Unlike some people, how much have you talked to her? I asked. My mother stiffened. I don't know. We text. She is interested in the family. She thinks you are very impressive. Leah. She loves hearing about your work. What did you tell her? My voice was rising. Mom. What did you tell her about my work? Nothing. My mother pulled her arm away. Just normal things. We were just chatting. She asked how busy you were, because she didn't want to bother you with Gavin's resume. I told her when you were traveling. I told her when you were under a deadline. I sent her a picture of your home office once because she is redecorating hers and she loved your shelving units. I felt the room spin. A picture of my home office, my desk, my whiteboards, my monitors. You sent her photos of inside my apartment? I whispered. It was just the shelves. My mother cried, her voice pitching up in defense. She said she admired your taste. Why are you attacking me? I was just being proud of you. I wanted her to see how successful my daughter is. I looked at her. I saw the vanity, the desperate need to display her perfect family to a stranger who had validated her. It wasn't malice. It was worse. It was a hollow neediness that had been weaponized against me. She isn't a career coach. Mom, I said. My voice dead. She is a spy. My mother's face crumpled. Don't be ridiculous. She brought a macadamia nut cake to the barbecue. I walked away from her. I couldn't look at her. If I looked at her, I would scream until my throat bled. I walked out to the car. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel. I needed to call Ethan. I needed something solid. I drove home. When I walked into the apartment, Ethan was on the couch, staring at his laptop. He looked up, his face pale. Leah, he said, we need to talk. I know, I said, dropping my keys. I know who it is. Her name is Marla Vance. She has been working Gavin. She has been working my mother. Ethan swallowed hard. He stood up and walked over to me. She approached me too. He said, I stared at him. What? 3 weeks ago, he said. At the coffee shop near my firm. I was waiting for a client. A woman sat at the next table. She spilled her sugar packet. We started talking. She said her name was Marla. She asked what I did. I said I was a lawyer. She asked if my wife worked in the city, and, I pressed. I told her you were a project manager at Astor Meridian, Ethan said. He looked sick. It was small talk. Leah. It meant nothing. I was proud of you, she said. Wow, that must be high pressure. Does she bring work home? And I laughed and said, only when the hardware fails. He covered his face with his hands. God. Leah. I basically told her to wait for a hardware failure. I stood there in the center of the living room, surrounded by the people who loved me. My brother, who wanted to be successful. My mother, who wanted to be envied. My fiancé, who wanted to be proud. They all loved me. And their love was the exact frequency the enemy had tuned into. They had all, in their own way, handed pieces of me to Marla Vance. I didn't yell at Ethan. I didn't have the energy. We need to find her, I said. I spent the next 6 hours doing what I did best. Research. I didn't have my corporate tools, but I had the internet, and I had a rage that clarified my mind like a drug. Marla Vance, Pivot Point Careers. The website was slick. Stock photos of diverse, smiling people in boardrooms. Testimonials from satisfied clients that read like they were generated by an algorithm. Marla helped me unlock my true potential. John D. Seattle. I reverse image searched the headshot of Marla. It returned 0 hits. That was a red flag. Real people exist in more than one place on the internet. Fake people exist only where they are planted. I ran the address listed on the website. Suite 400, 1200 Commerce Drive. I pulled up the county property records. 1200 Commerce Drive was a strip mall. Suite 400 was a mailbox rental store. I searched the business license. It had been incorporated 4 months ago in Delaware by a registered agent. A shell company. She didn't exist. Marla Vance was a ghost. A construct created specifically to harvest me. My phone rang. It was Agent Miller again. Ms. Reed, he said. It is Marla Vance, I said, cutting him off. But that isn't her real name. She has been in my parents' house. She has been contacting my mother. She spoke to my fiancé. She has surrounded us. There was a silence on the line. Then Miller spoke, his voice grim. We suspected as much. We have teams scrubbing the local surveillance feeds near your parents' home. I found her business address. I said, it is a mail drop. We know. Miller said, we raided it an hour ago. It was empty. She has burned the identity. So she is gone? I asked, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. No, Miller said. People like this don't leave until the job is done or the heat is too high. She might not know we are onto her yet. She might think the DSOD visit was just a standard audit. What do you want me to do? I asked. I want you to go about your life, Miller said. I laughed, a harsh barking sound. Go about my life? I don't have a life. I am suspended. My family is imploding. Act like you are handling it, Miller said. Post on social media about wedding planning. Go to the gym. If she is still watching, we need her to think you are distracted. We need her to think the breach was contained and you are just dealing with corporate bureaucracy. If she thinks you are hunting her, she will vanish. You want me to be bait, I said. I want you to be the project manager. Leah, manage the perception. I hung up. I looked at Ethan. He was sitting at the table, his head in his hands. We have to act normal, I said. He looked up. What? The agents. They want us to pretend everything is fine. So she doesn't run. Ethan looked at me, his eyes wide. Leah, this is dangerous. These people, they aren't playing. Neither am I. I said, I wasn't brave. I wasn't a hero. I was furious. I had spent 33 years following the rules, coloring inside the lines, being the good employee, the good daughter, the good partner. And because of that, someone had decided I was prey. Someone had looked at my decent, boring life and seen a weapon. I wanted to burn them down. I spent the rest of the evening replying to wedding emails. I posted a photo of flower arrangements on my Instagram with the caption, "Stressful week at work, but hydrangeas make everything better. #wedding prep, #relaxing. It felt like lying. It felt like dying. At 11 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text. It was a message on an encrypted messaging app. Signal. I didn't use Signal often, mostly for old college friends who were paranoid about privacy. The number was unknown. I opened the message. There were no pleasantries. No, hello? Just 2 lines of text that made the room temperature drop 10 degrees. You were never supposed to see that folder. Your brother made it messy. I stared at the screen. The blue light illuminated my shaking hands. She knew. She knew the file had been found. She knew about the investigation. And she wasn't running. She was reaching out. It wasn't a confession. It was a taunt. Your brother made it messy. I looked up at the dark window of my apartment. I realized then that the threat wasn't coming from my job. It wasn't coming from the government. It was coming from my life, and whoever she was. She wasn't looking at a target list anymore. She was looking at me. The days following the raid were a blur of high-decibel denial and suffocating silence. My parents' house, once a sanctuary of manicured lawns and predictable Sunday dinners, had transformed into a pressure cooker where the lid was rattling dangerously against the pot. My mother, Patricia, had decided that the best defense was a loud, litigious offense. She sat at the kitchen table, which was now devoid of electronics since the DSOD seizure, clutching a notepad and a landline phone she had dug out of the basement. "We need to sue them." "Leah," she said, slamming the receiver down after leaving a voicemail for the family attorney, a man who handled wills and zoning disputes, not federal espionage cases. "They cannot just burst in here and take my property. It is unconstitutional. It is harassment." "Mom," I said, leaning against the counter. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. "They had a federal warrant. They didn't break in. They were let in." "Because you brought this on us," she snapped, turning her fear into anger. She pointed her pen at me. "If you hadn't brought that drive into this house, none of this would be happening. You and your secret work. You and your sensitive files. Why couldn't you just work at a bank?" I looked at my father. He was sitting in the living room armchair, staring at the blank space on the wall where the smart TV used to be. He hadn't spoken much in 48 hours. He looked shrunken, as if the agents had confiscated his spine along with his router. "Dad?" I said. He didn't turn. "It is a mess. Leah, a real mess." And then there was Gavin. My brother was vibrating with a chaotic energy that swung wildly between panic and aggression. He paced the house like a caged animal, checking the windows, jumping at every car that drove past. "You have to fix this. Lee," he whispered to me when our parents were out of earshot. "You know people at that company. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I'm an idiot. Just get them to drop it. I can't tell them to drop a federal investigation." "Gavin," I said, my voice low and hard, "this isn't a parking ticket. You sent data to a broker." "I didn't know," he hissed. His eyes were red-rimmed. "I thought it was a resume helper. I'm the victim here. That Marla woman set me up." "You set yourself up." I said, "You stole from me." "Don't use that word," he said, flinching. "I borrowed. Family borrows. You have everything. Leah, you have the money, the job, the perfect fiancé. I just wanted a piece of the pie." "Is that a crime?" "Yes," I said. "It is literally a federal crime." I couldn't stay there. The air in the house was too thin, consumed by their refusal to accept reality. I needed to go back to my apartment. I needed to be in a space where logic still applied. I drove back to the city in the late afternoon. The sky was a bruised purple over the harbor. When I unlocked my apartment door, the silence greeted me like an old friend. But as I stepped inside, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It wasn't a wreck. There was no overturned furniture, no slashed cushions. It was exactly as I had left it. And yet, it wasn't. I stood in the entryway, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I am a project manager. My brain is wired for pattern recognition. I know where I put things. I know the precise angle of my existence. I walked to my desk. I had left a sticky note on the monitor, a reminder to call the florist. I always stuck my notes on the bottom left corner, aligned with the bezel. The note was now on the bottom right. I stared at it, a yellow square of paper. It screamed at me. I looked at the router on the shelf. The lights were blinking in a unison pattern I didn't recognize. 3 fast, 1 slow, a factory reset cadence. I pulled open my top drawer. My pens were there, my checkbook, but the paper clips, which I kept in a small magnetic dish, were scattered loosely in the back of the drawer. Someone had been here. They hadn't come to steal. They had come to look, to map, to install. I backed out of the room. I felt dirty. I felt exposed. I grabbed my keys and ran back to my car, locking the doors and sitting there, hyperventilating. The message on Signal had been digital. This was physical. Your brother made it messy. My phone rang. It was Agent Miller. Ms. Reed, he said. We picked up a login attempt on your home Wi-Fi. I am in my car, I said, my voice shaking. Someone was in my apartment. They moved things. They reset the router. Stay in your vehicle, Miller said. His voice shifted from administrative to operational. Do not go back inside. We are sending a technical team. The technical team arrived in a plumbing van. 2 men in coveralls who looked nothing like plumbers went into my apartment with cases of equipment. They were inside for 2 hours. When Miller arrived, he didn't look like a bureaucrat anymore. He looked like a hunter who had found fresh tracks. They planted audio bugs in the living room and bedroom, he said, standing by my car window. And they flashed the firmware on your router to mirror your traffic. They want to hear what you say and see what you type. Marla? I asked. Or the people she works for? Miller said, they are escalating. They know we are watching, but they want to know what you know. What do I do? I asked. I can't live there. You have to, Miller said. I looked at him, incredulous. You want me to sleep in a bugged apartment? If you leave, they will know you found the devices. Miller said, if you disable them, they will know. We need them to think they are winning. We need them to think you are just a scared, confused corporate employee complaining to her fiancé about her unfair suspension. He leaned in. We are going to leave the bugs, and we are going to give you a script. You are going to go home, pour a glass of wine, and talk to Ethan. You are going to say exactly what we tell you to say. I felt a wave of nausea. You want me to perform? I want you to help us catch them. Leah. I agreed, not because I was brave, but because I was angry. They had violated my sanctuary. They had touched my things. They had turned my home into a stage. That night, Ethan came over. I met him in the hallway and typed a message on my phone, showing it to him silently. Apartment bugged. Follow my lead. We are acting. Ethan's eyes went wide. He looked at the door, then at me. He nodded, swallowing hard. We walked inside. I felt the imaginary eyes of the microphones on me. I walked to the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of wine. My hands were trembling, but my voice, when I spoke, was loud and clear. I just don't understand why they are punishing me. Ethan, I said, reciting the lines Miller had coached me on. It is so unfair. I didn't do anything. Gavin is such an idiot, but he didn't mean to cause trouble. Ethan picked up his cue. His voice was shaky, but he managed. I know. Honey, it's just corporate panic. They have to investigate. Once they realize it was just a mistake, they'll reinstate you. I hope so. I said, I just want this to be over. I want to focus on the wedding. We did this for an hour. We talked about flower arrangements. We talked about the weather. We talked about everything except the terrifying reality that we were being listened to by criminals who likely sold infrastructure secrets to foreign governments. Later, lying in bed in the dark, Ethan pulled the duvet up over our heads. He whispered, his mouth right against my ear, so soft the microphones couldn't possibly catch it. I can't do this. Leah. I froze. What? I can't live like this, he whispered. I love you. God, I love you. But this? Spies in the apartment? The FBI raiding your parents? Your brother dealing with the dark web? It's temporary, I whispered back. We just have to get through the investigation. Is it? Ethan asked. Is it temporary? Or is this just who your family is? Chaos follows them. Leah. And now it's following us. I want a boring life. I want to worry about mortgages and lawn care, not whether my conversation is being recorded by a cartel. I didn't answer. I lay there in the dark, feeling the tears hot in my eyes. He was right. It wasn't fair to him. My family was a sinking ship, and I had tied our life to the mast. The next day, the fracture widened. I went to my parents' house to check on them. My mother was still in her lawsuit phase, drafting a letter to a senator. My father was still a ghost, but it was Sienna, my younger sister, who finally broke the pattern. Sienna was 26, the baby of the family. She was usually the one we protected. She worked at a bakery and spent her time on TikTok. We all assumed she was oblivious to the gravity of the situation. We were wrong. I was sitting on the back porch, staring at the lawn. When Sienna came out, she sat next to me, pulling her knees up to her chest. Leah, she said quietly, I have to tell you something. What is it? I asked. It's about Gavin, and that woman, Marla. I turned to her. What about them? You know how Gavin said he met her a few months ago? Yes, I saw them, Sienna said. She picked at a loose thread on her jeans. About 3 weeks ago, before your laptop died, before the brunch. Saw them where? In the parking lot behind the mall. She said, I was leaving my shift. I saw Gavin's car. He was parked next to a silver sedan. He was talking to a woman. It was her, Marla. I recognized her from the barbecue. Okay, I said slowly. So they were meeting. Leah. He handed her something. Sienna said, she looked up at me, her eyes wide and scared. He handed her a flash drive, a red one. My blood ran cold. A red flash drive. 3 weeks ago? I asked. Yes, that was before I brought the basic work files drive home. That was before the accident. This changes everything. I whispered, if Gavin handed her a drive 3 weeks ago, then the incident with my laptop wasn't a crime of opportunity. It wasn't a sudden, desperate impulse because he saw a folder on my screen. It was a fulfillable order. He had been harvesting data before. He had been feeding her. I stood up. Where is he? He's in his room, Sienna said. I marched into the house. I didn't knock. I threw Gavin's door open so hard it hit the wall with a crack. Gavin jumped. He was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling. What the hell? Leah? Get up, I said. He sat up, wary. What is your problem now? Sienna saw you. I said. Gavin's face went slack. He tried to mask it with confusion, but I saw the panic flare behind his eyes. Saw me what? She saw you in the mall parking lot 3 weeks ago. I said, she saw you give Marla a red flash drive. Gavin opened his mouth, then closed it. Don't lie to me. Gavin, I screamed. It felt good to scream. It felt like purging poison. This wasn't about the Port Authority file on Tuesday. You have been doing this for weeks. What else did you give her? Gavin stood up, backing away until he hit his dresser. It wasn't anything big. Just templates. Old emails you forwarded me years ago. Some PDFs from your old hard drive you threw out. You went through my trash? I needed the money, he shouted back. Why? I demanded. Why did you need money so bad that you would sell me out? Because I owe people. Gavin broke. He slid down the front of the dresser until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. He was sobbing now. Ugly, heaving sobs. I got into some stuff, okay? Online gambling, crypto. I lost a lot. Leah, like $40,000. $40,000, I repeated. The number hung in the air like a guillotine blade. They were going to hurt me. Gavin sobbed. Then Marla showed up. She knew. I don't know how she knew, but she knew about the debt. She said she could make it go away. She said she just needed industry insights, just metadata, just how the files are named. She said it wasn't classified. She promised it wouldn't hurt you. You are 35 years old, I said, my voice shaking with rage. And you believed a stranger who promised to pay off your gambling debt in exchange for corporate data was harmless? She said it was just for market research. Gavin pleaded. She said they just wanted to know how Aster Meridian organizes their projects so they could compete. I looked at him. I looked at my brother, who I had defended on playgrounds, who I had lent money to, who I had covered for 1,000 times, and I realized the cruelest truth of all. He didn't do this because he hated me. He didn't do this because he was evil. He did it because he felt entitled to my stability. He looked at my career, my success, my life, and he didn't see it as something I had built. He saw it as a family resource, like a shared bank account. He thought he could dip into my credibility and take what he needed because we were family. He thought my safety was his currency. That entitlement was the real betrayal. It was deeper than the theft. It was the assumption that I existed to absorb his consequences. I walked out of his room. I didn't comfort him. I didn't tell him it would be okay. I walked downstairs, past my mother who was asking what the noise was, and I went out to the porch. I called Agent Miller. I know everything, I said. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a parked car with Agent Miller and a tactical specialist named Sarah. We were 2 blocks from a public park in the city center. Here's the plan, Miller said. He handed me a small, ruggedized hard drive. It looked exactly like the one I had used on Tuesday. This contains a honeypot, Miller explained. We have loaded it with files that look like the encryption keys for the grid modernization project. They are fake, but they are incredibly enticing. If Marla gets her hands on this, she won't be able to resist sending it up the chain. You want me to give it to her? I asked. We want you to let her take it. Miller said, We have intercepted chatter on the dark web forum. The buyer is angry about the Port Authority file being flagged. They want clean access. Marla is under pressure to deliver something that works. How do I get her to meet me? You don't, Miller said. Gavin does. I felt a sick twist in my stomach. You want Gavin to set her up? Miller nodded. We have already spoken to your brother. We offered him a choice: cooperation or immediate arrest for conspiracy to commit espionage. He chose cooperation. Of course he did. I thought bitterly. Gavin would always choose the path of least resistance. Gavin has messaged her. Miller continued. He told her he has one last drive. The master drive. He told her you are bringing it to the park today to work on your wedding vows during your lunch break. He told her you would be distracted. So I am the bait again, I said. You are the project manager. Leah, Miller said, using my own logic against me, you are managing the handover. I walked into the park at noon. It was a bright, crisp day. Office workers were eating sandwiches on benches. Kids were chasing pigeons. It looked aggressively normal. I found a bench near the fountain, exactly where Miller had instructed. I sat down. I placed the drive on the bench beside me. I pulled out a notebook and started pretending to write. Audio is clear, Miller's voice said in my earbud, which was hidden under my hair. Visual is good. We have agents at every exit. Relax, Leah. Relax. Sure, I was sitting in a park waiting for a spy to steal a fake hard drive from me. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Target is not appearing, Miller said. Hold position. Then, a shadow fell over my notebook. I looked up. It was her. The photo Miller had shown me didn't do her justice. Marla Vance was nondescript in a way that required effort. She wore a beige trench coat, jeans, and sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked like a tired mom or a grad student. She didn't look like a threat, but her eyes were cold. Hello. Leah, she said. I froze. This wasn't the script. She was supposed to snatch the drive and run, or Gavin was supposed to meet her. She wasn't supposed to talk to me. Leah, do not engage, Miller said in my ear. Wait for her to make a move on the drive. I don't know you, I stammered, closing my notebook. Cut the act, Marla said. She sat down next to me. Not on the drive. On the other side. She crossed her legs. I know about the bugs in your apartment, she said comfortably. I know about the van parked on 4th Street. And I know that drive sitting there is full of junk data provided by the DSOD. My heart hammered against my ribs. Abort, Miller said. Leah, Get up and walk away. Now. I couldn't move. Fear pinned me to the wood slats of the bench. You are not very good at this, Marla said. She turned to face me. She smiled, and it was a smile devoid of warmth. You think this is a game? You think you can just set a trap and catch a fox? Who are you? I whispered. I am a consultant, she said, and I'm trying to help you. Leah, you are in over your head. Your brother? He is a liability. He is burnt. But you have access. Real access. I'm suspended. I said, for now. But you are smart. You'll be back. And when you are, we should talk. I am not talking to you. I said, you ruined my life. I didn't ruin anything, Marla said. I just exposed the cracks that were already there. Your brother was always going to sell you out. Leah, if not to me, then to a loan shark or a drug dealer. I just gave him a professional outlet. She leaned in close. She smelled of vanilla and stale cigarettes. Here is the reality, she said softly. You are going to let me walk away. You are not going to signal the van. Because if you do, if I get arrested today, things will come out. What things? Personal things, she said. Like the fact that your father has been using his work email to browse some very illegal offshore gambling sites, or that your fiancé, the perfect Ethan, has a sealed juvenile record in Ohio that he never told the Bar Association about. I stared at her. Ethan? We do our homework. Leah, she said, we know everything. We know about the scar on your knee from when you fell off your bike at age 7. We know about the abortion you had in college that you never told your mother about. I stopped breathing. No one knew that. No one. If I go down, she hissed, the data dump that hits the internet tomorrow will destroy everyone you have ever met. Your father will be fired. Ethan will be disbarred. Your mother will be humiliated. And you will be the reason. She stood up. She patted my shoulder. Tell the agents I didn't show, she said. Tell them Gavin lied. She turned and walked away. She didn't run. She strolled. She merged into the crowd of office workers and vanished. Leah! Miller shouted in my ear. What is happening? Why aren't you signaling? I sat there, paralyzed. I looked at the fake drive on the bench. It looked like a toy. I realized then that Marla hadn't come for the drive. She had come to deliver a message. She wasn't playing defense. She was playing offense. I reached up and pulled the earpiece out. I dropped it on the ground. I waited 5 minutes, shaking, before I walked back to the van. Miller was furious. He was red-faced, pacing the interior of the surveillance van. Why did you let her go? He demanded. We had her. We could have taken her. She made me. I said, my voice hollow. She knew about the trap. She knew about the van. What did she say to you? Miller asked. I looked at him. I thought about Ethan's career. I thought about my father's shame. I thought about the secret I had kept for 12 years. She just said she knew. I lied. She said she knew it was a setup and she walked away. Miller slammed his hand against the wall. Damn it. He took a deep breath. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and frustration. Come here, he said. He motioned to a bank of monitors. I need to show you something. You need to understand what you are protecting. He typed a command. The screen filled with a complex network diagram. It wasn't just Aster Meridian. It was a web connecting dozens of nodes. This isn't just about your Port Authority project. Leah, Miller said. The malware your brother uploaded? It didn't just exfiltrate files. It mapped the trusted connections between Aster Meridian and its clients. He pointed to the nodes. They have breached the water treatment facility in 3 counties. They have backdoors into the regional power grid. And as of this morning, we detected unauthorized pings in the air traffic control maintenance logs. He looked at me. This isn't corporate espionage. Leah, this is prelude to war. We are talking about the capability to shut down the eastern seaboard. And the key that opened the door? It was your login. I stared at the screen. The red lines pulsed like veins. I wasn't just saving my job anymore. I wasn't just saving my family's reputation. I was standing at the edge of a catastrophe that could kill people. And the woman who held the detonator had just told me that if I tried to stop her, She would burn my life to the ground first. I looked at Miller. I realized he didn't know about the blackmail. He didn't know I was compromised. I was alone. Again. I need to go home, I said. Miller nodded. Get some rest. We regroup tomorrow. I walked out of the van and into the blinding sunlight of the city. I felt weightless, unmoored. I walked to my car, but I didn't get in immediately. I stood there, watching the traffic, realizing that I had spent my whole life trying to be the person who fixed things. But some things can't be fixed. Some things can only be survived. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to survive the cost of what came next. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after leaving the park, the air conditioning blasting against my sweat-dampened skin. I was parked 3 streets away from the DSOD surveillance van, staring at a gray brick wall. Marla's voice echoed in my head. We know everything, the juvenile record, the gambling. She held my life in her hands. She held the fragile, carefully constructed reputations of everyone I loved. If I stayed silent, if I let her walk away, she promised safety. Just let the data flow. Just be the door. But I was a project manager. I dealt in risk assessments. And as I sat there, watching a plastic bag tumble across the pavement in the wind, I ran the projection. If I stayed silent, Gavin would keep stealing. My mother would keep leaking. Marla would keep taking. And eventually, when the data was useless or the heat got too high, she would burn us anyway. Blackmail isn't a transaction. It is a lease. You never own your silence, you just rent it, and the price always goes up. I realized then that I couldn't save them. I couldn't save Ethan's reputation. I couldn't save my father's dignity. I couldn't save Gavin's freedom. The only thing I could save was the truth. I put the car in gear. I didn't drive home. I drove back to the van. When I opened the rear door, Agent Miller looked up from his console, surprised. He had thought I was gone for the day. You came back, he said. I lied to you. I said, my voice was flat, stripped of all emotion. I didn't tell you what she said. Miller turned his chair fully toward me. The other agents in the cramped space stopped typing. Tell me now, Miller said. She threatened to expose my family. I said, she knows about my fiancé's juvenile record in Ohio. She knows about my father's offshore gambling. She knows things about my medical history that aren't on any digital record I know of. Miller's face hardened. He didn't look shocked. He looked validated. And? He asked. And I don't care anymore. I said, I felt a strange, cold lightness in my chest. Let them release it. Let them burn it all down. I am done being a hostage to my family's secrets. I sat down on the metal bench. She didn't just meet Gavin 3 weeks ago. I said, my sister saw them. Gavin gave her a red flash drive. It was before the laptop incident. He has been feeding her data for a month. And my mother has been sending her photos of my workspace. She thinks they are friends. Miller signaled to his team. The atmosphere in the van shifted instantly from observation to execution. We need everything. Leah, Miller said, every date, every text, every interaction you can remember. I gave them everything. I told them about the brunch. I told them about the career coaching emails. I told them about the red drive. I dismantled the fortress of privacy I had built around the Reeds for 33 years. Brick by brick. The takedown happened the next morning at 6 o'clock. It wasn't like the movies. There were no helicopters, no battering rams. It was just a procession of government vehicles rolling into the quiet, fog-draped suburb of Harbor Point. I was there. Miller had asked me to be present, ostensibly to identify devices, but I knew the real reason. He wanted to see if I would crack. I stood on the sidewalk, wrapped in a coat, watching the agents swarm my childhood home. They were more aggressive this time. They weren't asking. They were taking. They brought Gavin out 20 minutes later. He wasn't fighting. He looked small. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his feet bare on the cold pavement. His hands were zip-tied behind his back. He wasn't screaming defiance. He was crying. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and knew. Finally, that he couldn't hide the pieces. "Leah," he sobbed when he saw me. "Leah, tell them. Tell them I didn't know." I looked at him. I looked at my brother, who had sold my security for $40,000 to pay off a gambling debt. I felt a pang of pity, sharp and deep. But I crushed it. Pity was what got us here. "I can't fix this. Gavin," I said softly. They put him in the back of a sedan. He slumped against the window, his breath fogging the glass. My mother came out next. She wasn't handcuffed, but she was being escorted by 2 female agents. She looked wild, her hair unbrushed, her face blotchy. When she saw me standing next to Miller, she stopped. "You did this," she screamed. The sound tore through the morning quiet. Neighbors were looking out their windows. The curtains of suburbia were twitching. "Mom, please," I said. "You told them." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You told them about the texts. You told them about Marla. You chose them over us. I chose the truth." I said, "Truth?" She spat the word like it was poison. "You destroyed this family. For what? For a job? For a company that fired you? You are ungrateful. Leah, you are cold." I watched her being led away from the house, not under arrest, but detained for questioning. "You chose them over us." The words hung in the air. She didn't see the crime Gavin had committed. She didn't see the national security threat. She didn't see the betrayal. She only saw that I had broken the cardinal rule of the Reed family. Appearance is everything, and loyalty is silence. To my mother, honesty was indistinguishable from cruelty. I stood there until the cars drove away. The house looked dark and hollow. The front door left slightly ajar. "You okay?" Miller asked, stepping up beside me. "No," I said, "but I'm still standing." The blast radius expanded by noon. I met Ethan at a diner halfway between his office and our apartment. He was sitting in a booth, staring at a cup of black coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept. "They know," he said without looking up. "Know what?" I asked, sliding into the seat opposite him. "The partners. Someone leaked that you are a person of interest in a federal espionage case. They called me in this morning. They said it's a reputational risk to the firm." I closed my eyes. "I am so sorry. Ethan, they are sidelining me. Leah, I am off the chaotic merger case. I am off the partnership track for this year. They told me to take some personal time to get my house in order." He looked up at me then. His eyes were red. "I worked for 7 years for that partnership," he said quietly. "I know." I said, "And now I am the guy whose fiancé is under investigation by Homeland Security. I am the guy whose future brother-in-law is in federal custody." He reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was weak. "I don't blame you, Leah. I know you didn't do it. But, God, the cost. It is just spreading like ink in water. Everything it touches turns black." He didn't blame me, but I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. He was mourning the life he thought he was getting, the safe, predictable climb up the ladder. Instead, he was getting cross-examinations and subpoenas. We sat there in silence. I realized then that even if we survived this, even if I was cleared, there would always be a stain. We would always be the couple with the incident. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Answer it," Ethan said. "It's probably your lawyer." I picked it up. "Leah Reed." I said, "Ms. Reed, this is Simon Vance calling from the legal department at Astor Meridian." I stiffened. I hadn't heard from anyone at Astor in a week. "Mr. Vance," I said, "to what do I owe the pleasure? We would like you to come in." "Leah, today, we have a proposal regarding your employment status." I looked at Ethan. He was watching me, hope flickering in his eyes. Maybe this was the fix. Maybe this was the end of it. "I will be there in an hour," I said. Astor Meridian's headquarters was a glass monolith that reflected the sky. I walked into the lobby, and for the first time, my badge didn't work. I had to be signed in as a visitor. The receptionist, a woman I had exchanged Christmas cards with, wouldn't meet my eyes. I was escorted to the executive floor, not the basement conference room this time. The corner office, Simon Vance, no relation to Marla, just a cruel coincidence of naming, sat behind a desk that cost more than my car. He was the general counsel, smooth, silver-haired, and radiating a predatory warmth. "Leah," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." I sat. The view behind him was spectacular. The harbor glittered in the sun. It looked peaceful. It looked like a lie. "We have been reviewing the situation," Vance said. "It is complex. The breach is severe. But we value you. Leah, you have been a top performer for 5 years. We know this wasn't malicious on your part. We know it was a familial lapse." He slid a document across the desk. It was thick, bound in blue paper. "We want to bring you back," he said. "We want to reinstate you, with full back pay. We will cover your legal fees regarding the government inquiry. We will handle the press." I looked at the document. Reinstatement and settlement agreement. "What is the catch?" I asked. "No catch," Vance said, smiling. "Just clarity. We need to close the file on this incident so we can assure our clients that the breach is contained. This document simply states that you acknowledge a lapse in protocol regarding the transport of the backup drive, and that this lapse, and this lapse alone, was the vector for the unauthorized access." I read the paragraph he was pointing to. The employee admits that the security failure was a result of negligent handling of hardware outside of secure parameters, and accepts full responsibility for the introduction of external vulnerabilities. I looked up. "You want me to say it was just me?" "It was you." "Leah," Vance said gently, "you took the drive home." "Yes, but the vulnerability wasn't just the drive." I said, "The vulnerability was that the system didn't flag the exfiltration until it was halfway to Macau. The vulnerability was that you were using honey tokens because you knew the architecture was porous." Vance's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. "Leah, we are offering you a lifeline. You sign this, you get your job back. You get your life back. The company absorbs the hit, pays the fine, and we move on. If you don't sign, well, then you are an unauthorized actor who facilitated a federal crime. Aster Meridian will be forced to pursue damages against you civilly, and we have very deep pockets." It was a threat wrapped in a job offer. They wanted a scapegoat. They wanted to be able to tell the Department of Defense. It wasn't our system. It was a rogue employee. They wanted me to be the shield that protected their government contracts. "I need a moment to read this." I said, "Take your time," Vance said. "But we need an answer by tomorrow." I walked out of the building with the document in my bag. I called Miller immediately. "Don't sign it," Miller said before I could even finish explaining. "They are offering me my life back." "Miller," I said. I was standing on the sidewalk, watching the rush hour traffic. "It is a trap." "Leah, we met at a coffee shop 3 blocks away." Miller looked intense. "We identified Marla." He said, "Who is she?" "Her real name is Elena Rostova. She is a contractor for a firm called Ridgeway Asset Strategies." "Ridgeway?" I frowned. "That sounds like a hedge fund." "It is a private intelligence firm," Miller said. "They are mercenaries. They don't work for foreign governments directly. They steal data and sell it to the highest bidder. Sometimes that's China. Sometimes it's a competitor. Sometimes it's a short seller on Wall Street who wants to crash a stock." He leaned in. "Here is the thing. Leah, Ridgeway doesn't target random companies. They target companies they know are vulnerable. What does that mean? It means Aster Meridian has known for 6 months that their remote access protocols were weak. We found internal memos during the discovery phase of the investigation. Their chief security officer warned them that the legacy code was full of holes. They didn't patch it because it would have cost too much downtime. Instead, they deployed the honey tokens and hoped for the best. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest. They knew? They knew, Miller said. And now they need someone to blame. If you sign that paper, you are admitting that the breach was your fault. You are absolving them of negligence. And when the Department of Justice comes knocking for a $10 million fine, Aster will point at you and say, "She did it." I stared at my coffee. "Everyone is using me." I whispered, "Gavin used me for money." Marla used me for access, and now Aster wants to use me as a human shield. Miller nodded. That is how the world works. Leah, the big gears grind the little gears. I am not a little gear, I said. I stood up. Where are you going? Miller asked. I am going to get you proof. I said. Leah, don't do anything stupid. I am done being stupid. Miller, I am done being the project manager who just manages the mess. I am going to fix it. I went home. I put on the dress I had worn to my interview at Aster 5 years ago. I put on my heels. Then, I opened my jewelry box. I took out a small digital recorder I used for client meetings, one of the few devices I hadn't surrendered because it was in a box of old college stuff I kept in the closet. It was old, disconnected from the cloud. It was safe. I taped it to the inside of my blazer, right behind the lapel. I called Simon Vance's personal assistant. Tell him I am ready to sign. I said, but I need to see him one more time. I have one condition. It was 7 in the evening. The office was empty. The cleaners vacuuming the hallways. Vance was still at his desk, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. Leah, he said, smiling. I knew you would make the smart choice. I sat down. I placed the blue folder on the desk. I will sign it. I said, but I need to know something first. For my own peace of mind. Anything. Vance said. Why didn't the system stop the transfer? I asked. I know the architecture. The data loss prevention software should have quarantined that file the moment it touched a non-encrypted port. Why didn't it? Vance sighed. He took a sip of scotch. He looked relaxed. He thought he had won. Leah, technology is imperfect. Don't give me the PR line. Simon, I said, I am signing my life away. Tell me the truth. Was the patch installed? The one the security team recommended last quarter? Vance chuckled. He looked at me with a patronizing pity. You really are a stickler for details, aren't you? That's why we hired you. He leaned back in his chair. Look, the patch was delayed. Our government partners. They need uptime. We couldn't take the grid offline for a week to rewrite the kernel. It was a calculated risk. We thought the honey tokens would be enough to catch any leaks. So you knew. I said, you knew the door was unlocked, and you just hoped no one would turn the handle. We have to balance operational reality with security. Leah, it's the nature of the business. The government knows. They look the other way as long as the data flows. But when a breach happens, someone has to take the fall. That's just politics. The government knows? I asked. You mean you have contacts who authorize leaving the system vulnerable? Vance waved a hand dismissively. Let's just say there are people in D.C. who prefer we deliver on time rather than secure, but that's above your pay grade. Leah, all you need to worry about is this signature. He pushed a gold pen toward me. Sign it, and you are back on the team. We protect our own? I looked at the pen. I looked at the man who was casually admitting that they had gambled with national security to save a deadline. I picked up the pen. Vance smiled. I uncapped it. I hovered over the signature line. Then, I capped it again. I put it down. I can't, I said. Leah, Vance's voice dropped. Don't be a martyr. There is no statue for martyrs in this industry, just unemployment lines. I stood up. I am not a martyr. Simon, I am a project manager, and I don't sign off on incomplete deliverables. I turned and walked out. Vance shouted after me. You are making a mistake. You are going to lose everything. I walked to the elevator. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would crack a rib. I felt the recorder warm against my chest. I walked out of the building and into the cool night air. Agent Miller was waiting in his car around the corner. I got in. I reached into my jacket. I peeled the tape off. I handed him the small black device. Did you get it? He asked. He admitted it. I said, he admitted they delayed the patch. He admitted they prioritized uptime over security. And he admitted that their government partners knew about it. Miller took the recorder. He looked at it like it was a grenade. You know what this is, Leah? He asked quietly. Evidence? No, this is a declaration of war. You aren't just taking down a hacker anymore, you are taking down a defense contractor. And the people Vance mentioned, the government partners, they are going to come for you. I looked out the window. I saw the lights of the city. I saw the office tower where I had spent 5 years building a career that was now ash. Let them come, I said. I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear is what you feel when you have something to lose. I had lost my family. I had lost my job. I had lost my reputation. I was stripped clean. And in that emptiness, I found a weapon I never knew I had. I am not a witness to a mess anymore. Miller, I said, looking him in the eye. He started the car. No, he said, you are a threat. We drove into the night. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know if I would ever go home again. But for the first time in a week, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like the one holding the match. The morning after I recorded Simon Vance, the world looked deceptively the same. The sun was a pale, watery yellow over the harbor. The traffic on the interstate was the usual snake of red brake lights. I was driving a rental car, a nondescript silver sedan provided by Agent Miller, heading toward a safe house in the western suburbs for a formal debrief. I was calm. It was a strange, chemically induced kind of calm. Born from a lack of sleep and the adrenaline of having a recording device taped to my chest the night before, I had the evidence. I had the smoking gun that proved Astor Meridian wasn't just a victim of negligence, but a willing participant in a gamble with national security. I checked my rearview mirror. There was a black SUV behind me. It had been there since I merged onto the highway 3 miles back. I didn't panic. I was a project manager. I tested variables. I changed lanes, moving from the center to the right. The SUV signaled and moved with me. I slowed down to 50 miles per hour. 10 under the limit. The SUV slowed down. It didn't pass. My pulse turned cold. This wasn't Agent Miller's team. Miller's team drove domestic sedans, and they knew how to tail without being seen. This was sloppy, or worse, it was arrogant. It was a message. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 9 in the morning. I reached for my phone. Placed in the cup holder, I hit the speed dial for Miller. Leah? Miller's voice was sharp. You are 5 minutes out. I am being followed. I said, black SUV, late model, tinted windows. It is mirroring my lane changes. Where are you? Exit 42, approaching the industrial park. Do not come to the safe house, Miller commanded. If you bring them here, we burn the location. I know. I said, my hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. What do I do? Keep driving, Miller said. We are scrambling a unit. Just stay on the highway. I looked at the exit ramp coming up. It led to a sprawling shopping complex, a place with cameras, people, and witnesses. I am not staying on the highway. I said, there are stretches of road up ahead with no cameras and no shoulders. If they run me off the road there, I disappear. Leah, stay on the route. I'm going to the mall. I said, I am forcing visibility. I yanked the wheel to the right, cutting across the gore point of the exit ramp at the last second. Tires screeched behind me. I looked in the mirror. The black SUV swerved, mounting the curb to follow me, kicking up a cloud of dust. They were aggressive. I floored the accelerator. The rental car whined in protest. I ran a red light at the bottom of the ramp, dodging a delivery truck that blared its horn. The SUV was right behind me, filling my rear window. I pulled into the parking lot of the terrifyingly cheerful Harbor View Mall. It was early, but the doors were open for the mall walkers. I drove right up to the main entrance, hopping the curb and parking diagonally across the pedestrian walkway. I jumped out of the car. The SUV screeched to a halt 20 feet away. The passenger door opened. A man in a dark jacket started to get out. I didn't run away from him. I ran toward the glass doors, toward the security guard standing there with his mouth open. Call the police, I screamed, pointing at the SUV. That man has a gun. It was a lie. I hadn't seen a gun, but it had the desired effect. The security guard reached for his radio. Shoppers in the parking lot stopped and turned. Phone cameras came out. The man in the SUV hesitated. He looked at the crowd. He looked at me, standing in the light, surrounded by witnesses. He got back in the car. The SUV threw itself into reverse, tires smoking, and sped away toward the back exit. My knees gave out. I sat down hard on the concrete planter, shaking. 3 minutes later, 2 sedans screeched into the lot. Miller jumped out of the first one. He was wearing a tactical vest over his dress shirt. He ran to me. "Are you hurt?" "No," I said. I looked at him. "They know." "Miller, they know I have the recording. They are scared," Miller said grimly. "That was a desperation move. We need to get you off the street. Now." They took me to a different location. It wasn't an office. It was a hotel room near the airport. Booked under a false name. 2 agents stood outside the door. Miller sat across from me on the floral-patterned bedspread. "We have a situation," he said. "With the SUV?" I asked. "No," Miller said. He looked uncomfortable. "With your mother?" I frowned. "Is she okay?" "Physically, yes, but she decided to take matters into her own hands this morning. She went to the Astor Meridian headquarters." My stomach dropped. "She did what?" "She went to the lobby," Miller said. "She demanded to speak to the CEO. She was loud. She was screaming that her daughter was a hero and that the company was ruining our family name." "Oh, God," I whispered. "Someone recorded it. Leah, it is on the internet." He handed me a tablet. I didn't want to watch, but I couldn't look away. The video was shaky, vertical, filmed by a receptionist or a courier. There was my mother, standing in the pristine white lobby of Astor Meridian. She was wearing her best coat, but her hair was wild. She was pointing a finger at a security guard. "You listen to me," she screamed. Her voice cracked. "My daughter, Leah Reed, is the only honest person in this entire building. We are good people. We have a summer house. You cannot treat us like criminals." The camera zoomed in on her face, contorted with rage and entitlement. "I want a statement," she shrieked. "I want an apology. My son is sensitive. You are ruining his life." The video ended with her being gently but firmly escorted out by 2 guards, still screaming about her rights. I scrolled down to the comments. Typical Karen raising a criminal family. Data leak daughter probably sold the files to buy that coat. Imagine screaming about your summer house while your kid is under federal investigation. Ungrateful sister. The whole family looks toxic. I put the tablet down face down. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was final. The public didn't know the nuance. They didn't know about the honey tokens or the delayed patches. They just saw a privileged, hysterical woman defending a daughter accused of espionage. My narrative was gone. I wasn't the whistleblower anymore. I was a meme. My phone, which Miller had returned to me after sweeping it, buzzed. Unknown number. I looked at Miller. He nodded. "Answer it. Put it on speaker." "Hello?" I said. "Leah?" The voice was jagged, wet with tears. It was Gavin. "Gavin," I said, "where are you?" "I am at a motel." He sobbed. "The feds let me go but told me not to leave the state. Leah, you have to help me." "What is wrong?" "Marla's people," he whispered. "They called me. They said I am burned. They said if I testify, they will release the videos." "What videos?" "Gavin?" "Videos of me," he cried, "from the gambling sites, and other things, private things. Leah, they are going to ruin me. You have to fix it. Call your friends at the company. Tell them I was just a patsy. Tell them to make it stop." I listened to him weeping. I listened to the sound of a 35-year-old man who still believed that if he cried hard enough, his big sister would make the monsters go away. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask about Mom. He didn't ask about the SUV that tried to run me off the road. He only grasped rescue. He had no concept of consequence. "Gavin," I said, my voice was steady, "I can't fix this." "What?" he shrieked. "You are the project manager. You fix everything. Not this." I said, "You sold my data. You broke the law. The people threatening you are the people you invited into our lives." "You are abandoning me," he screamed. "You are a traitor." I hung up. I looked at Miller. I felt a weight lift off my chest. It wasn't relief. Exactly. It was the clarity of amputation. The limb was dead. Cutting it off was the only way to survive. Miller took the phone. "Leah," he said gently, We need to talk about the future. He opened a folder on the bed. The recording you made of Simon Vance is explosive. He said, it implicates Ridgeway Asset Strategies, Astor Meridian, and potentially 2 contacts within the Department of Defense. This is going to be a massive, messy trial. And? I asked. And you are the star witness. Miller said, you are also a target. The SUV today proved that. They aren't going to stop. He slid a paper toward me. We are offering you a deal, full immunity for any procedural violations regarding the drive. But we need you to enter a protective program. We will relocate you, new identity, new city, new life, until the trial is over, and likely after. I looked at the paper. It was a contract for the erasure of Leah Reed. My old life is gone anyway, isn't it? I asked. My job, my reputation, my family. Miller nodded. There is nothing to go back to. Leah, the water is poisoned. I picked up the pen. I need to see Ethan. I said, one last time. We met in a private room at the back of a library in the city. Miller arranged it. It was quiet, smelling of old paper and dust. Ethan looked 10 years older. He was wearing jeans and a sweater, not his usual suit. He looked like a stranger. Leah, he said when I walked in. He didn't hug me. We stood on opposite sides of the small wooden table. I saw the video of your mom, he said softly. I know. I said, I am sorry. Ethan sighed. He sat down, rubbing his face with his hands. The partners put me on indefinite leave. He said, they said until the optics improve. I sat down across from him. I am going away. Ethan, I said, the DSOD is moving me. It is a protective measure. He looked up, his eyes filled with tears. Where? I can't tell you. For how long? I don't know. Maybe forever. He nodded slowly. He didn't ask to come with me. We both knew he couldn't. He was a creature of roots. He had his firm, his parents in Ohio, his carefully planned trajectory. He couldn't live in a shadow world of safe houses and aliases. I love you. Leah, he said. His voice broke. I really do. But I can't do this. I can't live looking over my shoulder. I can't build a family inside a crisis. I know. I said, and I wouldn't ask you to. I reached across the table. I placed my hand on his. He squeezed it, his fingers familiar and warm. You deserve a boring life. Ethan, I said, you deserve safety. I am sorry I'm not brave enough. He whispered. You are brave enough to tell the truth. I said, that is more than my family ever did. We sat there for a long time, holding hands in the silence of the library. It was the saddest moment of my life, but it was also the cleanest. There was no screaming, no blame, just 2 people acknowledging that their paths had diverged into different worlds. I walked out first. I didn't look back. The final stop was the house. I told Miller I needed to do it. He argued, but I insisted. I needed to look them in the eye. I needed to close the door myself. The agents secured the perimeter. I walked up the driveway. The grass was getting long. The perfect lawn was already starting to look neglected. I used my key. My mother was in the kitchen. She was drinking wine from a coffee mug. My father was sitting at the table, staring at his hands. Gavin was gone, holed up in his motel, hiding from his own shadow. They looked up when I entered. My mother's face hardened. You have some nerve coming here, she said. After what you did to us, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood in the doorway, feeling like a visitor from another planet. I am leaving, I said. You won't see me for a long time. Maybe never. Good, my mother spat. Go back to your government friends. You destroyed this family. Leah, you humiliated me. I walked over to the table. I placed my key on the wood. It made a sharp click. I didn't destroy this family. Mom, I said, I just turned on the lights. Don't you lecture me. She stood up, swaying slightly. I raised you. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay us? By getting your brother arrested? By letting strangers mock me on the internet? I looked at my father. Dad, do you have anything to say? He looked at me. His eyes were watery and weak. We just wanted you to fix it. Leah, he whispered. Why couldn't you just fix it? Because it wasn't broken. Dad, I said. It was rotten. I looked at them both. You treated my boundaries as optional. I said, my voice calm and cold. You treated my success as your property. You thought my job was just a source of bragging rights and free tech support. And when I told you I was scared, when I told you this was dangerous, you treated my fear as drama. I took a breath. You didn't want a daughter. I said, you wanted a resource, and now the resource is gone. I turned around. Leah, my mother shouted, if you walk out that door, you are dead to us. I stopped. I didn't turn back. I was dead to you the moment I stopped being useful. I said, I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me. I heard my mother scream something, but the sound was muffled, distant. I walked down the driveway to the waiting car. I got in. Drive. I said to Miller, the war didn't end with a bang. It ended with paperwork. 3 days after I entered protective custody, Astor Meridian filed a civil lawsuit against me for breach of contract, defamation, and theft of trade secrets. They released a statement to the press calling me a rogue actor and a disgruntled employee. They tried to bury me under a mountain of legal filings. They expected me to fold. They expected me to be the scared project manager who just wanted her life back, but I wasn't her anymore. My attorney, a sharp, terrifying woman appointed by the Department of Justice, released a statement on my behalf. Leah Reed rejects the settlement offer. She rejects the characterization of events provided by Astor Meridian, and she looks forward to entering her evidence into the public record. That afternoon, Agent Miller played his card. The DSOD issued a sealed intervention order. It blocked Astor Meridian's lawsuit on grounds of national security. It wasn't a public exoneration, but it was a chokehold. Then came the internal sweep. Based on my recording, the FBI raided the executive offices of Astor Meridian. They found the emails. They found the authorization for the delayed patches. They found the communication logs between Simon Vance and a subcontractor who was funneling kickbacks to a Ridgeway shell company. The twist wasn't that they were incompetent. The twist was that the call was coming from inside the house. The leak wasn't a bug. It was a feature. They had left the door unlocked on purpose to facilitate an unauthorized data-sharing channel that bypassed oversight. And my brother had just accidentally stumbled through it, tripping the alarm they thought was disabled. Simon Vance was indicted. 3 other executives were quietly forced to resign. The government contracts were suspended pending a full audit. I watched it all on the news from a small apartment in a city I cannot name. It was snowing outside. My hair was dyed dark brown. My name on the mailbox was different. I saw a clip of Gavin being led into a courthouse. He looked terrified. He would probably get probation and a heavy fine. Thanks to his cooperation. My parents were nowhere to be seen. They had likely sold the house and moved, running from the shame of their own making. I turned off the TV. I sat in the silence of my new life. It was a hard, cold silence. I missed Ethan. I missed the smell of the ocean at Harbor Point. I missed the illusion of safety I used to have. But I was free. I had lost every relationship I had ever valued. But I had kept the one thing they tried to take from me, my integrity. I walked to the window and looked out at the strange city. I was Leah Reed, the woman who burned her life down to expose the truth. And as I watched the snow fall, covering the world in a clean white sheet, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. I was the one holding the light. Thank you for listening to this story. It was a journey into the terrifying reality of how fragile our security and our families can be. I would love to hear from you. Please comment below and tell me where you are listening from. Have you ever had to choose between protecting your family and protecting the truth? If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of betrayal, justice, and the high price of integrity. Share your thoughts in English in the comments. I read every single one. Stay safe and watch your data.